Today, I'll explain a war drama movie, The Captain. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with Harold running breathlessly across the grassland from the German soldiers riding on a jeep. Gunshots pour all over the ground as they try to shoot him while the others blow trumpets. Harold reaches the forest and the German soldiers' vehicle stop. They jump off the jeep and the sniper tries to shoot him but misses. Harold continues dashing across the forest until he falls to the ground. While catching his breath, he suddenly hears voices from the German soldiers looking for him. So he rapidly crawls to hide underneath the tree roots. German soldiers appear in the area where he fell in just a moment, and they continuously shout while looking for his body. As Harold keeps hidden, he waits and listens for their voices, but things go quiet. He then comes out, checking the surroundings to see any signs of German soldiers. After his escape, Harold fixes his garments when he suddenly sees someone sluggishly walking in the railings. Feared, Harold hastily hides behind the wall, holding his dagger. It's a weakling soldier almost out of breath. As soon as Harold notices the soldier cannot stand up any longer, he bolts towards him and steals his weapon. Harold's actions frighten the soldier, but then he still helps the soldier to stand. Inside the abandoned house, the soldier helplessly sits on the ground. Harold stares at him while placing his weapon beside the door and across the soldier. Shocked, Harold watches the soldier slowly die. Later that night, Harold with his friends see a hanging corpse on a tree with a warning. Looting will be punished by death. As soon as Harold sees it, he convinces his friend to steal. At the farm, Harold loots the hen's eggs while his friend holds a big rock in front of the sleeping farmer. Unfortunately, accidentally wakes the hen and tries to calm it down, but it's too late. The neighbors open their light from their house and the farmer wakes up. Harold looks at his friend and tells him to throw the stone at the farmer, but his friend flees. The farmer loudly signals his neighbor about them being thieves, but Harold quickly shoves the farmer who crashes into the chicken coop. When he searches for his friend, the neighbors already stab him to death. Harold shudders as he escapes alone. The next day, he continues traveling into different places until he finds an abandoned vehicle in the forest. Inside is a case of military uniform. Without hesitation, Harold wears it and eats the leftover food from the basket. The moment he completes wearing the uniform, he jumbles apple while happily singing and checks the trinket in his uniforms. He even plays pretend as a captain himself. Eventually, Freytag calls him. Harold nervously watches Freytag walking towards him. Then he suddenly salutes at Harold. While Freytag sets a vehicle, Harold gets the gun and waits for Freytag to open the vehicle door. But before he gets in, he requests for Freytag's identification paper. Harold accuses Freytag he deserted, but Freytag defends himself. Then Harold returns the form and gives Freytag an apple. As soon as they get inside the vehicle, Harold orders Freytag to find him an inn. Along the trip, Harold carefully sneaks a notebook in the bag and put it in his pocket, then rapidly throws the bag outside without Freytag seeing him. At night, they finally arrive at the inn. Then he lets Freytag accommodate the stay-in. Customers at the inn perplexedly looks at them the moment they entered. Still, the innkeeper assures Harold not to take it personally as they don't like seeing people wearing a uniform, especially the German ones. Then Harold speaks to the innkeeper, informing him about the condition behind the front. The owner leaves dumbfounded and then looks at Freytag, who stands tall behind Harold. The customers watch Harold walks toward the table and sit. Harold brings out his notebook to write and asks the innkeeper's name. The innkeeper trembles and quickly admits his inn's violation, but Harold clarifies he wants to bring back the items stolen from them. Everyone starts listening to him when Harold assures them about returning their lost money. Then Harold orders Freytag to retrieve the food from the innkeeper. After Freytag serves the food, Harold tells the customers he and Freytag will eat first. Inside Harold's room, he fixes the notebook while smoking. When suddenly, the innkeeper shouts outside. Harold looks out from the window and the innkeeper informs him that they caught a thief. Harold goes out and scrutinizes the thief. Harold walks toward the innkeeper and grabs a gun from him and shoots the thief mercilessly. Harold discusses with Freytag their plans for tomorrow. The next day, Harold and Freytag drive their way to the farm. Harold and Freytag find deserters inside the farmhouse who quickly points their guns at them, but Harold shouts. When they lower their weapons, Harold orders Freytag to collect their marching orders to return them to him. When Harold receives it, Kipinski explained they got separated from their unit. Harold listens, but then the older woman interrupts, which upsets Kipinski and punches her. Harold sits at the table and the deserters want to join him, so Harold agrees and gives them a mission. On the table, Harold cheers with his newly built military name, Task Force Harold. Inside the farmhouse, the TFH prepares for their departure while Kipinski asks about his apparent mission to Harold. While they cook food in the woods, two soldiers approach them. Harold exits from his vehicle and allies with the two. On their way to the mission area, Kipinski impatiently asks Harold where they will head. When Harold answers him, Kipinski rushes towards him and points his gun towards Harold, but they hear an upcoming vehicle of the military police. The TFH arranges themselves in a position while Harold stays at his truck. While the military police treats them aggressively, Harold demands to talk with their correctional officer. The CEO approaches him, asking for Harold's papers, but Harold explains their special mission ordered by the highest authority. The CEO is skeptical and asks for his documents again, but before Harold gives the paper to the CEO, he also asks for his form. The CEO is speechless and lets them pass, towing their vehicle to take them into the work camp too. While they arrive near the camp, Captain Junker joins them. Inside the vehicle, Captain Junker threatens Harold's fake identity. While they reach work camp 2, Captain Junker invites Harold to drink while waiting for gas. As they walk, Captain Junker discusses prison life and work camps. At the barn, Harold tosses a drink to Captain Junker when suddenly, Shoot enters. Captain Junker introduces Harold, mentioning Harold's special mission behind the front to Shoot. Harold shares the successful mission to convince them. Captain Junker reminds Harold to show no amnesty for escaped inmates and to not let them fall into the hands of the enemy, and Harold agrees. Captain Junker and Shoot then shares their dilemma with the prisoners, persuading Harold to take responsibility. But before Harold takes the deal, he tells Captain Junker and Shoot to look after his men while he takes care of the prisoners. When Captain Junker leaves, Shoot invites Harold to the inner sector. As they enter the ward, Harold witnesses Shoot disciplining the prisoners. He permits Harold to interrogate them. As Shoot left, Harold starts interrogating, but no one answers. When Kipinski asks the prisoners about his crime, he finally answers. Harold nods and Kipinski beats the prisoner. The prisoner dies and Harold quickly orders Kipinski to line them up outside. While Kipinski orders the prisoners to empty their pockets, Freytag leaves the ward and closes the door, then pleads to Harold to exclude the dead, but Harold disagrees. On the other hand, Shoot visits Hansen to talk about granting Harold to see the prisoner in the detention barracks. When Shoot mentions to Hansen that Harold receives authorization from the Führer, he reminds Shoot that Harold's CO will accompany Harold. While walking, Shoot sees Kipinski carelessly beating the prisoners outside. Then he goes to the barn to inform Harold. After Harold greets his entrance, Shoot calls Brokov and orders him to dig a trench for the dead prisoners. Inside Hansen's quarters, a CO knocks on his door and opens the window beside him. Hansen sees guards with the prisoners digging. Then Hansen quickly goes outside, only to witness Kipinski shoot the prisoner. As he follows Kipinski, Hansen sees another brutal killing in the barracks. While Shoot and Harold drink, Hansen enters the barn and asks the events in the camp. Shoot introduces Harold while Hansen asks for Harold's papers. Then Harold says he received authority from the Führer to care for the German combat forces. But Hansen warns him to not take any further actions for the time being, for he hasn't received any orders from the Justice Department yet. In Hansen's office, he calls Dr. Thiel over the phone, informing about Harold's authorization in executing 5 prisoners. When Dr. Thiel asks for Harold's presence, Harold reports he beheaded 5 prisoners for attacking him during the interrogation, where Shoot vouches. After they talk, Hansen informs Harold to wait until tomorrow before taking further steps, as Dr. Thiel will contact the chief public prosecutor regarding his papers. Shoot convinces Harold to sort things because there will be no problems with the Justice Department once they convince a Gauleiter to be on their side. While Shoot talks to the Gauleiter in his quarter, Harold silently listens. When Hansen feels Harold and Shoot are looking at him through the window, he stands up. Then Shoot answers the call from the Gauleiter as he successfully grants Harold's permission to talk to Dr. Thiel. Harold glares at Hansen first, then talks to Dr. Thiel. As Harold tells Shoot that Dr. Thiel would check with the Gestapo, contact the persecutor, then inform Hansen. Shoot swiftly opens the window to tease Hansen. In just a minute, Hansen receives a call that Gestapo grants Harold the proper authority. Inside the inner sector, Shoot orders the prisoners to arrange their formation by 30 and let the prisoners march while singing. Hansen gives Harold a sharp look before entering his quarter, and then Harold walks towards a vehicle along with Shoot. As every prisoner lines up from the trench, the military prepares. Harold and Shoot stand before them, watching every prisoner shed blood as they fire the autocannon. When Shoot sees some prisoners are still alive, he quickly orders the soldiers to fire them all. While Harold watches his people shoot the prisoners, a military approach him and reports about Harold's unlawful actions. After the genocide, everyone finishes their meal and get back to work. They continue firing the dead prisoners while someone suggests going in the trench and checking if they are still all alive. Then Harold orders Freytag to do it. On the other side, Hansen makes a complaint through a call to Dr. Thiel regarding Harold's improper disposal of the prisoners. While they talk, Hansen and the soldier hear unpleasant noises from the outside. After the call, Hansen goes through a window and shouts at the soldiers for wanting peace and order. Then he leaves the quarter to make a report. When the festivity begins, Harold joins the table of Shoot and his wife. then turns over his head to the comedian beside him. As the comedians continue to perform, everyone enjoys the celebrations and sings. Then Shoot suddenly gives his speech for Harold and calls him to take his turn. As soon as Harold finishes his speech, the two soldiers eventually fight. The festivity continues. Harold invites two entertainers to join them. While tossing their drinks, the soldiers at their back watch their comrade fight. As Roger continues to talk, Shoot suddenly grabs his collar after hearing this statement. The celebration turns into chaos. Everyone in the mess hall starts fighting, and some soldiers attack the sleeping comrade in the room. While Harold gets out of the mess hall, he sees Brockhoff and his men beating up the prisoners. Then he quickly goes towards them and commands Brockhoff to stop, but he continues. Frustrated, Harold takes out a gun and shoots Brockhoff. To finish the situation in an orderly manner, Harold ties up 4 prisoners. Then he points out the gun, telling them to run, and so they did. Harold gives the weapon to Roger and orders them to shoot. After Roger, Harold passes it to Schneider, who chooses to shoot himself. As the prisoners keep on running, Roger continues to shoot, when suddenly Shoot's wife gets the gun and shoots the last prisoner. The next day, Shoot goes to Harold's tent and reports the local reserve cops, who start combining the areas. Then Harold begins to order his men to terrorize the civilian population and threaten their brothers in arms. Going back to the work camp, Shoot works towards Harold when suddenly a mining bomb explodes. To their surprise, an aircraft started bombing work camp too. Only a few survived. Then Harold promotes Freytag and Kipinski in the rank of corporal, while the others become sergeants. Only the brick post from the camp gate remains in the work camp too, and then the rest is a field. Riding in a military vehicle with a vandal named Express Court Harold, Harold and his men stop in front of the building. When he sees an older man coming out of the door, he shouts at him and calls him a traitor. Then his men catch him and shoot. Harold introduces himself as the head of Special Detachment and Express Court Herald to the people, and gives his speech to protect their fatherland with his law and order. Outside the Hotel Oranien, the Express Court Herald tries to steal things from people who walk. While Harold accompanies himself inside the hotel, when Erica enters, she catches the attention of Harold. When Harold is about to offer his hand for a dance to Erica, Kipinski quickly gets her. To his dismay, Harold orders his men to invade the room where Kipinski and Erica stay, then joins Erica on her bed while Kipinski faces his punishment. In the court, Harold accuses Kipinski of looting, burglary, and high treason. Then he tells everyone inside the court that he disgraced their outfit. Express Court Harold finds him guilty and sentences him to death. They put Kipinski outside the hotel as the soldiers take off his clothes. Without any further, Harold commands his men to fire. Going back to the hotel, Harold and his men create a party. Women start dancing sexually in front of them while the men watch them. The following day, the military police invaded the hotel. They arrest everyone inside, including Harold. Dr. Kremer discusses Harold's crimes for impersonating an officer, organizing a massacre in the World Camp 2, and hanging a mayor flying a white flag. Then Harold interrupts. He corrects Dr. Kremer about hanging a mayor from a shooting. As Harold admits his crimes, Dr. Kremer sentences him to death by hanging. But Weyer disagrees. He stands with Harold and tells Dr. Kremer that despite his nonsense military demeanor, Harold shows excellent military leadership qualities as he protects their fatherland. Harold suspends his case and gives him an administrative transfer to the front. The movie ends with Harold walking through the forest filled with skeletal remains. Then weeks after the war, the Royal Navy arrests Harold for stealing a loaf of bread and later finds out his war crimes. And a year after, Allied forces execute Harold and 6 of his accomplices and sentence him to death. Harold is only 21 years old.